This episode is brought to you by Paramount Plus. If you don't already subscribe to Paramount Plus, please use our affiliate link by going to talkthroughmedia.com/Paramount Plus. Using our affiliate link gives us a little credit, which helps us to keep bringing you great content. U.S. residents only.
Hello and welcome to episode 2 of the Star Trek Strange New Worlds Talk Through. I'm Brian.
And I'm LT.
And this morning we will be covering season 1, episode 2 of Star Trek Strange New Worlds, titled Children of the Corn. I mean Comet. Which we were talking about. That's why I said it. Although I intentionally said it this time. I think it's something has to do with our generation, because every time I see that, I also think of Children of the Corn.
Well, it's the fact that was a thing once upon a time.
Before we get started, we want to remind you that we provide early access to a virtually uncensored version of the podcast that goes out before it hits the main feed, and it's usually got all of the sausage in it. Like, for example, in the episode 1, we got to hear the vocal stylings of LT when I went to the bathroom.
And you get to hear all the in jokes and things that make us laugh at each other.
Yeah. And you won't hear it on this feed, but like last week, or the last Fear the Walking Dead talk through had me fall asleep in the middle of the episode, which Patreons got to listen to on that feed. So those are the kind of things that you get to hear. Anyway, it's usually stuff that we pull out of the regular podcast, but and it's usually, a little grittier, a little, less polished, less processed version. But you can go to patreon.com/Brian and Ruthie to sign up. We have additional feedback from season 1, episode 1 of Strange New Worlds, titled Strange New Worlds. So let's go with that and open hailing frequencies. Okay, well, first we have some errata.
Incorrect.
Not really errata, but I didn't do a full, a great job of identifying all the references that were in the first episode. So I wanted to correct that somewhat.
Well, in your defense, Brian, there were a lot of references.
Yeah. But I missed a lot of them, and just going back, I wanted to identify them. And we're saying, again, that a lot of these were identified with the help of the Trek Culture channel on YouTube. They're one of my go-tos for this kind of stuff, and for that matter, any Star Trek content. They're over 200,000 subscribers now, so they're pretty good. So anyway, as part of their thing, they have cetacean observations, so they get some good things in there. So what I was going to mention, one I should have mentioned last week that I saw, and I just didn't put it in the notes. The Day the Earth Stood Still was the movie that Pike was watching in the morning. That Captain Battelle said, "You watching that thing again?" Well, that's significant because that was directed by Robert Wise, who directed Star Trek: The Motion Picture. So there is a bit of a Star Trek pedigree there. So,
Latu Barada Nikito.
Yeah. And that's not the Keanu Reeves version from like about 15 years ago. which wasn't bad, actually. I thought that version wasn't bad, but it wasn't the original. Pike's horse. We see Pike riding a horse in the cage, so that was worth mentioning. We see old style Star Trek communicators in that cabin as well. And near the end, we see Samuel Kirk. And I know we talked to him. I know you were reveling how, it was good to see a mustachioed Star Trek person. He was last seen dead in Operation Annihilate, and he was played by Shatner wearing a fake mustache. So that's you see him, and that's literally what you see of him. But in this case, he's not played by the same guy that plays him in. So the guy that would be playing Kirk in Strange New Worlds is not the guy that's playing Samuel Kirk. So the guy that's playing Samuel Kirk, I looked him up actually. He is played by
Dan Janot.
Dan Janot, who he's a longtime Canadian actor who I guess is best known for his role in the show Rain, which I've never seen. I know it was on CW, and that's like Reign of Monarchy. And was also in the series Good Witch, which I've not heard of, but that was, I guess, so he wasn't, he was in 13 episodes of Rain. So I don't know if he was a full-time there, but it looks like he was only in one season of it. And also a recurring role in The Bold Type, which, again, I don't know anything about that one, but...
And he's done a lot of video game voice work.
Yeah. Well, he's out of Montreal, so I think he probably is used quite a bit for, Montreal's a big, video game producer. Like I know Ubisoft, for example, is out of Montreal. They've got big presence there, so he probably gets a lot of work that way. But yeah, anyway, so he's the guy playing Samuel Kirk, not Paul Wesley. The marital necklace that T'Pring gives Spock is similar in shape to Kishara that we see in Enterprise. Lon's file mentions first contact with the Gorn. It's Ensign Chin Riley that discovered her on board when she was on the USS Martin Luther King Jr. That's mentioned in dialogue. Mm-hmm. When the Enterprise is in space dock, it is what's behind it is a Shepard class, which we see from Discovery. Of course, Burnham is mentioned in the episode, so as well as Discovery is a few times. Uhura has the famous iconic earpiece, as does the what's her name, Ensign Christina, this week. Yep. When in Pike's quarters, there is a 3D chess set, so I guess it maybe suggests that maybe Spock played 3D chess with Pike as well, not just Kirk. There's one part where he says fascinating, so that's of course a tie into the old Star Trek. Supposedly, and I haven't had this confirmed, but I know the guys at Trek Culture had indicated that the starbase that we see in the episode is Starbase 1, and that is the starbase that we see destroyed effectively destroyed at Disco. Now, I'm not 100% sure that it is, because I don't remember seeing like the domes in it, and it looks quite a bit different in that episode. So although Trek Culture indicated it was, I'm not 100% sure, but I at least wanted to mention it. And the last thing, apparently this is, I knew I had recognized it, but that music that they play in the elevator where the alien woman is kind of looking at Pike kind of in a flirty way before Spock's ears start to go all crazy. The Muzak that's playing is apparently a cover of some season 2 Disco soundtrack music. So they used it in this. So anyway, I thought it was something that I recognized, and it turned out it was. Is there anything else you wanted to bring up from last week?
No, sir.
Okay. So we got some feedback from Brian from Colorado, and then some other feedback from Jeff on the podcast. Since I had a lot to say, LT, I'm going to let you take both.
Okay. Well, Brian from Colorado says, I finally watched the Strange New Worlds episode last night. It's amazing. I'll need to view it again and attempt to formulate any feedback. I'll try to bundle episode 1 and 2 feedback together. And then Jeff, X-Force11, says, my ham-handed comment was them pushing through Pike's PTSD to come and save the day. But I rescind that after thinking on it more. Well, we get it, Jeff. I think that was part of us working through the episode. So thank you for that comment. And thank you, Brian. And we'll be waiting to see what you've got to say once you get caught up.
Yeah. Yeah. Unfortunately, you didn't make the recording for episode 2. So just wanted to say you're hearing this, the Patreon subscribers, you're getting this ahead. The episode 1 at the time that LT and I are recording this would be Saturday the 14th. We haven't released the episode 1 yet to the regular feed. I'm hoping to do that today. I've got a whole bunch of things I've got to get through today, but I'm hoping that that's going to be one of them. So I'm going to try to do that, and then we'll release this episode on the main feed hopefully sometime this week. But Patreons will get this first. Okay, so all right, so let's move on to this episode, season 1, episode 2, titled "Children of the Comet." It is written by co-showrunner Henry Alonso Myers, and I believe he's best known for his work on The Magicians, which is a show that I never watched, but I know it was on Sci-Fi. And Sarah Tarkoff. It is directed by Maja Vrvilo, who has directed several episodes of Star Trek Discovery and Lower Decks as well. And I didn't get a chance to confirm that she directed Picard, but I think she may have directed a couple of episodes of Picard season 1. So
I think she did. The name is familiar.
Yeah, but certainly Discovery she has. The description from ParamountPlus.com is as follows. While on a survey mission, the USS Enterprise discovers a comet is going to strike an inhabited planet. They try to reroute the comet only to find that an ancient alien relic buried on the comet's icy surface is somehow stopping them. As the away team try to unlock the relic's secrets, Pike and Number One deal with a group of zealots who want to prevent the USS Enterprise from interfering. The star date is 2912.4. The air date is May 12th, 2022. It has a runtime of 52 minutes and 19 seconds. All right, LT, what did you think of Children of the Comet?
Well, Brian, I gave it a 9.9 out of 10. She's not my girlfriend.
Yep. Yeah, speaking of Spock saying things, and it was actually right after he said she's not my girlfriend, I am giving it a 9.8, diffusing tensions by applying rigorous logic. Or I could use Mahanites or ancient arbiters of life. So you take your pick. But I like 9.8, diffusing tensions by applying rigorous logic, because that is not how I would do it. Anyway.
It's true.
Yeah. All right. We got a couple of listener ratings. Andy in the Midwest, he says, I give this episode a 9.5. It is everything I love about Star Trek.
And West from Minnesota says, I give this 7 out of 10. I didn't like this episode. I got to see it early, and I distinctly remember that I didn't like it.
Huh. I wonder why. I guess we'll find out.
I guess Wes can take the mantle of being the Russian judge this time.
Yeah. Okay, so we have listener yeses.
Yes!
Andy from the Midwest says, I love these characters and their interactions. I can see the seeds of who Uhura will become in this actress's portrayal. I also really love Ortegas. She's a joy to watch, and I love her hairstyle. I wasn't expecting to see Kyle from TOS, but I'm happy he's there, and I hope we get to learn more about him than we ever did before. I think it is perfect how they are serializing the characters' personal arcs by giving us plots that are resolved by the end of the episode. I'm looking forward to being able to randomly rewatch my favorite episodes on their own in the future in any random order, the way I do with older Trek.
Yeah, it's funny. I never watched my Trek that way. I don't know why. I guess maybe it's because I'm a completist, but while, I would watch, like, certainly if I'm, watching it on regular TV, it'll be random, whatever comes on. But if I'm like religiously watching it, I'll watch them in sequence.
Yeah.
So
one thing that I've noticed just for me is before I started watching Star Trek on H&I, which they show episodes like Monday to or Sunday to Friday, I was watching pretty much in the order they showed it. Now, prior to that, there was a show that is on, it's one of the digital add-on channels that whenever they went to digital broadcast, those extra channels that seems like every local station picked up.
Yeah.
And it was, I think it was MeTV would show TOS on Saturday night, and it tended to be kind of out of order. So if it's on broadcast, I'll watch whatever's coming on. I'm not quite have to watch it in order kind of guy if I'm streaming, but I will tend to just go through, and if there's a particular episode I want to watch, I'll watch it and then just see what comes after. So it's kind of the Paramount Plus effect. You and I have both joked about that if you watch, say, Picard, then they'll show some other thing they think you want to watch afterwards. And you were saying you got an episode of Lower Decks. Well, I typically get Voyager episodes. It's like they're reminding me that I haven't seen all of it.
I got Voyager this time. So where I got Lower Decks last time, I got Voyager this time. So I was saying this morning when I woke up, that's what was playing was Voyager. And it just keeps playing.
Well, and because I want you to say it, so what episode of Lower Decks did you get when you got an episode of Lower Decks, Brian?
I got I Excretus. And of course, that's the one with It's Naked Time.
Yes.
Yep. Yep. And I was waiting for that to come, and when I got to that, I was laughing. That was uh that was good to see. I gotta say that really I needed a good laugh when that episode came on, and that really really worked for me. So
Well, and I have to admit that the wallpaper that I used for when we did that episode of the podcast with Shax in Naked
oh yeah.
Time, that picture tends to turn up on my computer for some reason.
Yeah. Wes from Minnesota, he says, Pike cooking reminded me of Cisco. Yeah, that's a good point because Cisco used to do that as well.
Mhm.
Uhura's background was a nice touch. Yeah, although kind of tragic, but it was good to get some background on her hit that we never had before. And the Enterprise barrel rolling to avoid enemy fire. Very cool. Yeah, there was a whole lot of that I thought was very cool, which I'll talk about in a minute.
As will I.
Okay, good. Well, LT, what have you got?
Well, since you just mentioned it, it's a perfect segue into it. I really love the fact that we see the Enterprise being maneuverable.
Yeah.
And I'm going to have to, again, I'm pulling out the soapbox that a lot of people say, well, the Enterprise never did that in the original series, and you never saw a lot of zoomy, swishy, swishy with the Enterprise. And even when we got to see some maneuver sequences in the movies, that it tended to be more capital ship type things. If you're watching like an
Right.
old Age of Sail pirate movie, that the Enterprise tended to move in large, graceful arcs rather
Right.
than, fast, if you want to say PT boat or fighter plane type maneuvers. But let's be honest, kids. When you were younger and you had your model of the Enterprise and you were running up and down the hall of your house, the Enterprise did a lot of maneuvering and did a lot of zoomy, swishy turns
Yeah.
and yes, I think that this format, the fact that it's more cinematic and we have much better capacity for special effects allows us to do that. But in my mind, it goes back to if Gene would have had the money in the 60s and the technology would have existed, I think we might have seen more of this.
I'm sure we would have. Yeah.
And
the time too, because the thing is, and this was true not just in the 60s but in the 80s and the 90s, is that they were doing 26 episodes a season. And how much time are they going to spend on a special effects sequence? Like it just didn't make a lot of sense for them to do that.
Well, and it's a different series, but I've got to throw it in there. It's the same reason we used to always joke that why did the Cylons in Battlestar Galactica, the original series, always break right? That was the special effects stock footage that they had from the beginning of the series. And as a cost-cutting measure, as time goes on, they basically used all of the effects and all of the stock footage that they cut when they had a bigger effects budget for like the pilot. And so that's why you always saw the same maneuver scheme on the screen, because they were reusing footage. So I just think that it's a nice touch, and it's something that I think you can't discount, that she's a big girl, but she's agile. And I think seeing a little bit of maneuver is not a bad thing. Because again, you've got my head canon, which I don't see the Enterprise as a big, slow, ponderous ship like a Spanish galleon. I'm thinking the Enterprise is, a little more sprightly, a little more maneuverable. And even though it is a big ship, you can still make some pretty drastic maneuvers if you need to. And for those of you who are going to go, but it's too big, I would say go look for some footage. And I think it was the Nimitz. The Nimitz is a big aircraft carrier. It's a very big aircraft carrier. But there is some footage that I saw when she's running at flank speed and they're making maneuvers. And you would be surprised, even though it takes a lot of real estate to turn, you'd be surprised how fast they can turn an aircraft carrier. So I would still go to It's a Good Thing.
I would agree with that.
My next yes, we get to see Chief Hemmer. And even though I'm going to bring him up again later, I do like the fact that we have an Andorian engineer, or actually an Anar engineer to be more precise. And I really enjoyed the little sequence with him and Uhura in Pike's cabin. And I like the fact that Uhura snapped back at him in Andorian.
Yeah, that was good.
So that it's like, you know, after all the sass, he's like, I like her.
Yeah. 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 I mean, it showed her personality, you know, and her resilience, which I think we got a lot of resilience in her. You know, she's unsure of herself. She's we see throughout the episode that, you know, she has doubts in herself. So she's confident, but at the same time, you know, she's like, she keeps saying, well, you know, I'm a cadet, you know, this is my first away mission, stuff like that. But you know, she's there for a reason, and he wouldn't have picked her if he didn't think that she could do it. And you know, of course, the mission becomes more complicated, but she came through, and she came through brilliantly, you know. So
well, and that's one of those things that you can highlight the whole dress uniform to the crew gathering is, yes, as the cadet, you're going to get picked on. There is going to be a little bit of, I would say, gentle hazing in this case. It was good to see that, yes, she is capable and she is smart, but she's also still trying to suss out working with a regular crew, because being in school as a cadet, you know, as she's attending Starfleet Academy, it's still not the same as your first actual deployment with an active unit. So you get those crew bonding moments where you're always going to pick on the new guy.
right.
I remember back when I first got assigned to my unit back in service that there were things that you would do to the new guys, like send them to the supply sergeant and ask for a box of grid squares, which, if you're wondering, that's just markings on a map. There are no actual grid squares.
Okay.
The Air Force guys who would send somebody to the supply sergeant and ask for 50 feet of flight line or a bucket of prop wash.
What is that?
Okay, prop wash is the effect of the air coming off of a propeller. It's a phenomena. It's not a thing. And, you know, flight line is that area on the runway where you park airplanes. It's not actually like string.
Okay.
So it's just things that you do to pick on the new guy so that when they show up, they go, oh, he's the new guy.
Right.
So there's always a little bit of ribbing that goes on just to feel the person out. You want to kind of, you know, figure out, you know, how's their sense of humor? How are they going to do? Because a lot of times how they react to that sort of thing may determine how they're going to react once you start actually getting under the pressure of a mission. So I enjoyed the fact that you saw the bridge crew, you know, hanging out together and eating and talking. And so that was one of those things that you get where you get to see some character interaction that's not just on the bridge. and as we've said before, Pike likes to kind of get the measure of his people in a less formal situation. So we've seen him cook for his crew before.
Yes, we have.
That it's not just the captain's mess, as we saw on Enterprise a time or two, where the often referred to but rarely seen chef has prepared something.
Oh, yeah.
Because they talk a lot about chef, but you never saw chef.
Unless he was Riker.
Unless he was Riker. I was going to say. And speaking of crew interactions, I had to get a little bit of a chuckle over Chapel doting over Spock. That we know from TOS that there was always a little something going on there, because I think she made him some soup once upon a time, and it seemed like that Chapel was always kind of worried about Spock.
Yeah.
So it was pretty nice to see the seeds of that this episode.
Yeah.
One thing I did notice was Helm people having their own evasive patterns, because when the Enterprise first went evasive,
yeah,
they did, what was it, Ortegas something, and then what did Pike do? He called for his evasive pattern.
Well, and there's also April Omega 3.
Yep.
Yeah.
So that's one of those things that I guess there are different, we know there are different evasion patterns. So that may be something they do while they're on the simulator. And I think my last guess is that if they keep doing what I think they're going to do, I'm happy about it. That we have a character focused portion of the episode so that we get the development that we've all been hoping for each of the individual crewmen, but it is a part of the larger narrative arc that runs through the episode, so that we get to have, say, a little more focus on Lon, or we get to have a little more focus on Uhura, but it fits into the overall story that they're telling for that episode. And this is something that they did in TOS. It's something we've seen before. It seems to be a sort of hallmark of Star Trek storytelling, that they're able to not just show the main bridge crew, but we get those little snippets from someone else who you could arguably say is the B plot of the story.
I think we're going to keep seeing that kind of thing. I mean, I think they'll rotate through and see everyone. I think, did we not see Dr. Mabenga this week? I don't remember seeing him. He's the only character that I don't remember seeing.
I don't think we did.
Yeah. But I think that's the kind of thing that we're going to see. Like this particular episode coming up may focus on Una, or it may focus on Hammer. Reason why I say those two characters is we see them in the clip that is comes up. So they may have a B plot. I don't know. I do have something on that. Am I not good enough, or hold your horses, or whatever we end up calling it? But I think that, where they're going with it right now is good. So,
well, and 2 episodes in, I think they've done a good job with it. Rather than we just get one central character and everybody else is secondary to that, I think we're going to actually get more opportunities for the ensemble to flex their chops a little bit, and I think that's a good thing.
I do too. I agree. I want to, of course, highlight Celia Rose Gooding and her performance of Uhura. This is a much different a younger version of Uhura that we even got to see uh, in the movies. And I think that that she's good. I mean, the one thing I'm having an issue with is how different her hair is. That's the one. That's the one thing. Because I used to like Uhura's hair, but it also was pretty 60s. So um, I'm not. I shouldn't get too worked up over um, her hair getting much more. I would say natural looking than anything else. So um,
Well, and you could always make the argument that because she's in the academy, she's under a different grooming standard than she would once she gets out on her permanent assignment.
yeah. So anyway, she's really good. I do have more to say about her in my notes.
Yep.
So I loved how they used music in this episode. I don't think that this is something that we've not seen before. Of course, in Discovery, we saw something very similar approach, but it was mathematics, not music. But I liked how they did it. And I thought that tied to that, the special effects in this episode, in that chamber, and then later, the evasion scenes, and then the shuttle scenes, and that, I thought that they were just amazing. They were really, really, really well done. So,
and I have to concur there. I liked the shot of the impacts of the torpedoes hitting the shield on the Comet.
yeah,
That you saw the shield had sort of a hex pattern to it.
yeah.
And I like the way they did the hits on the Enterprise.
Yeah.
That rather than just a circular
it's almost
explosion,
like a waterfall kind of thing.
Rather than just a boop and you get a round, a roundish explosion pattern, you actually see the energy dispersing across the shield.
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah, I thought that was really well done. And, like I say, the evasion patterns and all that, I thought were really cool. And like you say, that's nothing that, could have been done 50 years ago, and certainly not 30 years ago. I mean, they started getting close to this in Deep Space Nine. But even that, the battle scenes in that, and the scenes, say the Borg scenes in First Contact, still not up to the same kind of level. So, also, was that computer voice Majel Barrett's?
No, it wasn't.
No,
the voice for the computer is an actress named Alex Kapp.
Oh, okay.
I went ahead
because it sounded like Majel Barrett.
Well,
so
I actually looked her up.
Okay.
And it looks like her previous jobs is she had several episodes on the New Adventures of Old Christine. She had an appearance on Seinfeld and Spin City, and looks like she was...
What is her name?
Alex Kapp, with a K.
Alex Kapp. Okay. All right. Well, anyway, she certainly sounded like Majel Barrett, so at least there's that. All right. Well, anyway, let's move on and get to our nose today, and we are still going with Picard here.
No!
All right. Why don't you take Andy?
Okay, let's kick off our listener nose with Andy in the Midwest, who says, the only character I don't care for yet is La'an, but I'm hoping she grows on me as we learn more about her. Funny story. My wife watched all the 90s era Treks with me, but she won't watch new Trek because she feels it's too dark. I tried to convince her to watch Strange New Worlds with me because I knew that it was supposed to be more optimistic and the episodic nature would make it seem less dark since the plots will resolve each episode. She wasn't buying it, but she did walk into the room while I was watching episode 1 near the end, just in time to hear Lon tell the story of what the Gorn did. I can't win. I guess I'll be watching this one alone too, as my 2 Trek watching kids are now in college.
And for once, when I played that, I meant to.
Well, I feel for you, Andy. As I have relayed before, the Trek series that my wife won't watch is Voyager, and part of that has to do with the season premiere for Star Trek Voyager was January 17th, 1995, and she and I were in the delivery room working on getting my first child born.
Okay.
So I think she still has some residual trauma from me trying to watch Star Trek and holding her hand going, push, honey, push.
Would you have one of those little handheld TVs?
No, they had a TV in the delivery room.
Oh, LT.
And I'm going,
that's where a VCR is supposed to,
I'm sitting here going, oh, wow, it's the new Trek series. It's like, pay attention to me. I'm having a baby.
Well, I can't really hold that against her. Unfortunately, like the episode, or I should say the first airing of Best of Both Worlds was, for me, was part 1. I was best man at a wedding, so I did not get to watch it live. But thankfully it was on another channel the following day, so I watched it then. But still, that was of course that's a different kind of thing. But yeah, you should have recorded it. Just come home and watch it after all of that is concerned.
Well,
she doesn't even need to know that you're.
I'd been at the hospital for 2 days.
Yeah. Well, if you knew it was coming, you still could have set your VCR. Anyway.
Well, like I said, the thing that I knew was coming was not Star Trek.
Yeah. I know. I'm just giving you a hard time. Anyway, to get to that, she is the character for me that is still kind of a big question mark, because I'm not really sure why they decided to make her a relative of Khan. That hasn't been explained yet. The backstory that we've gotten, that hasn't been part of it. So I don't know. We'll see though.
We will. And
yeah,
I have some of the same reservations. I just kind of wonder what they're up to.
Yeah. And so far we haven't really seen it play as part of it, but we'll see. West from Minnesota just has one short little thing. The Shepherds reminded me too much of the Krill from the Orville. Okay. Just, I guess, the religiosity of them, I guess. I don't agree or disagree on that. All right. LT, what do you have for your nose?
Well, it's one of the questions that I've always had. If you can't beam down, if there's something blocking the transporter, why not take a shuttle?
Yeah.
If they can't beam them out and they're that close, why not send a shuttle? Just pick them up.
That's a good point. Unless the shuttle wouldn't get through the force field.
Well, and that's the thing.
They never addressed it.
No. And there's several times when they never address it. And that was really the only super hard no that I had.
All right. My big question with this, and I put it in the nose. It's not a huge no, but it is a no in terms of like, okay, well, is this consistent or not? In Picard's day, like for example, we had a situation with in pen pals, for example, we had that little girl that communicated with Data, and suddenly, they were asking for help. And of course, if they ask for help, they're going to help. But originally, the whole thing was breaking the Prime Directive or not. And I thought that as part of the Prime Directive, if there was a comet that was going to hit a world and there were, people on that world and they weren't, able to do anything about it, I thought that the Prime Directive was, well, there's nothing we can do, see ya, wouldn't want to be ya. So to me, I'm asking, is this a violation of the Prime Directive?
And I'm going to go to the side of no, it's not, because I always take the Prime Directive as you can't directly interfere.
Okay.
And that's pretty much been a directive that you're not to contact or influence. I think that, stopping some rogue planetary body from smashing into your planet is not really interfering with their culture.
Well,
I mean, if you want to take an absolutist view, that if you want to take your shepherd position and go, it is the will of, Mahanish that the planet should be cleansed of life, that the Mahanish will take life and the Mahanish will grant life. I guess I'm still in the position that if there's some poor planet of primitives that, all they have is, sticks and huts, and you're going to prevent some large planetary body from smashing into their world and destroying all life, that as a starfaring community, it's not necessarily a bad thing to keep that rock from crashing into their planet.
So my other question in my nose is, when it comes to flying that shuttle, why Spock? Why is Spock the one to do it? Wouldn't Ortegas be a better pilot in that case?
Maybe, but then who's going to drive the Enterprise?
Well, yeah, that's true. That's true. It just made me wonder, like, why him? I wasn't too sure of that, but and I have more to say about him piloting that shuttle in a minute, but I thought he did a good job, but I just wondered, well, he's not a pilot, or he's not in that role, so why him? So anyway,
maybe it's because, I'd say maybe it's because he's the science officer and he had to be sciencey on where he did his thing.
Yeah, maybe. Okay, well, anyway, let's move on to our not good enough / hold your horses, and let's play both again.
Hello, this is Captain Tilly. What the hell? What the hell? Hold your horses.
Not good enough, damn it! Not good enough!
And to answer your questions, Andy in the Midwest, he says, hold your horses, not good enough. Not sure of the category name yet for Strange New Worlds, and we aren't either. So, and
hold your not good enough horses.
And I didn't address this at the start, but we still don't have a third host yet. So that's it. I know at least one person that won't be, but we'll just address that once we have identified the third. So if you're interested, you're hearing this and you're interested in becoming the third host, along with LT and me, send me, an instant message or, an email or whatever, or send in feedback, whatever you do. And let me know, and we can discuss it. But the position is still open. So, all right. So Andy, he says, I'm not sure how I feel about watching the Enterprise zip around during the space battle. It looked awkward to me, but I don't know if that's because it wasn't done well, or if it is just because I'm not used to seeing the Enterprise move like that. And my thought was, we kind of talked about this already, but I think it's probably due to the fact that you're not used to seeing it move like that. This is the first time, other than, say, the season 2 Discovery finale, where we see the Enterprise do that. But in case of that show, it didn't do that so much, but other ships did. So, and there were a bunch of, fighters and stuff like that. But, I mean, I don't have a problem with this at all. To me, I always thought that the Enterprise should be able to move like this. We just didn't see it because, like you said before, it wasn't practically effective. They couldn't do it, so that's all you need to, think about for that.
Okay. Well, Wes from Minnesota says, this episode felt more like the Orville than Star Trek, but that's okay. The various series tend to have growing pains, and this is one. And I would say, well, you didn't like the episode, so, I won't say that didn't color it a little bit. And I can't speak to the Orville because I don't watch the Orville.
And that's something I was going to mention, is that I know in LT's case, he doesn't like the Orville. There was something about the Orville that, I don't know, rubbed you the wrong way. And that's okay. But I think that the Orville has been good. I think it's gotten better as we go. The show is coming back next month, I believe, and I'm looking forward to it. But as far as I don't know, I didn't really see any major issues with it. I mean, you're not addressing it, so Wes, maybe it's the special effects that made you feel more like the Orville. Maybe it was the ship, because I don't know, that Shepherd ship kind of reminded me of some of the Orville ships. But I don't know. I get what you're coming from, but I don't share it, and so sorry you didn't like it.
At some point, I guess I can explain why I don't dig the Orville as much as a lot of people do, but
if you want to do that now, or you want to do that later,
it's mainly because, let's go ahead and just throw it out there. I like Seth MacFarlane. I mean, I enjoy his work. I've enjoyed, I like Family Guy. I mean, I like American Dad on occasion. But the Orville just never really hit home with me, mainly because everybody was saying, oh, this is real Star Trek. This is real Star Trek. And I'm going, I don't remember TOS making that many, dick jokes. And it's the Seth MacFarlane type humor didn't really jive with the rest of it's a part of the flavor of the Orville. I get that.
Yeah.
But it just was almost a little too irreverent. which is funny because then you'll say, but LT, you like Lower Decks. And it's just a different style of humor.
Yeah.
Mike McMahon has a different way of making the funny than Seth MacFarlane does.
Right.
And somehow it didn't, there were times when it was an homage, but there's times where the Orville was more of a parody to me.
Yeah.
And it just never really stuck. I've seen several episodes, and there were a couple episodes that I saw that I liked.
Okay.
But I just didn't get into the series. I'm sorry.
Did you see the Ceylon? I think I said that right. The episodes with the Ceylons.
No.
Okay.
The episode that I remember the most was the social media one.
Okay.
Where your likes on the planet were on the big board.
Right. Which was actually similar to a Black Mirror episode from around the same time. My take on it is give it another chance, because it's the humor kind of, they've kind of done some adjustments of the humor, and it's not quite as humor ridden, and it's more, it's still an element in it, but it's and there are some episodes where, I don't know, they go too far, and then there are other episodes where there's very little humor in it at all, and those to me are, some of the better ones. But anyway, not everyone's cup of tea. So, all right, LT, what do you have for your not good enoughs?
Well, and I talked about his character before, and I thought about the best way to bring this up, but I'm still really not sure how I feel about having a blind chief engineer.
I agree.
It's the same thing that I would say of, I don't know if I want a blind electrician or a blind mechanic.
Right.
There are some things that no matter how capable you are, there are still some things that depend on sight. And I just am trying to suss out how you're going to have somebody to maintain engines and do the things you need to do when you can't necessarily read a gauge. And, I will say that there is a good friend of mine who was a mechanic, and a damn fine mechanic, but he had an accident in the garage and lost a great deal of his sight. Now, he is still a mechanic, but it's hard because, again, you're still talking about something that there are things you can do when you're working on an engine that you can do by feel, but there's still some things you have to see. So,
right.
I like the character. I like the idea. I'm just still not quite 100% on board with how they're going to pull this off.
Yeah. And I had a similar kind of reaction to him that I said, and I think it's probably worth bringing up right here because it fits. So I don't understand how this whole thing of his blindness is compensated by superior senses. It's not a new concept, and I think it's just kind of like a gimmick, but it's not a new gimmick. Like, this is something they've done before, and I don't really, because I think it's dangerous, because I think people think this, that because you're blind, your other senses get to be better, and that's not necessarily the case. You may learn to hone your senses, but that's not something that automatically happens. I think everything I've ever heard is that that's just a myth, So I don't like that they're putting that across because, like I say, it's just it's a trope kind of thing. So,
And there are things you can do to adapt.
yeah.
There are things you can do to make life easier for you, but it's still one of those things that it makes a difference. Just like the thing that I was told years ago is, musically, if you guys didn't know, if I hadn't mentioned it before, I played saxophone.
Oh, really?
And as a saxophonist, you use all of your fingers. And while it is possible, if you are missing a finger, that you could play, there are some things that you couldn't do because of the way a saxophone operates if you lose a finger. There were some notes that you would mechanically not be able to play because you don't have the digit to press the key. That's not to say that you're not a talented musician. It's not to say that you can, read music and pick up things by ear and do all sorts of amazing riffs. It's more of a mechanical issue that you have to have 10 fingers to play a conventionally rigged saxophone. So, like you were saying, I agree that it's an interesting concept, but you're right. There's a hint of tropiness there that kind of make me wonder. Now, and I would say you could have a blind communications officer. You could have a blind computer officer. You could have there are several things you can do that there are tools and there are things to accommodate that. But chief engineer it just makes me a little, I don't know, a little hesitant.
Well, and in a funny way, we've already had this in Geordie LaForge, although essentially, they made his sight, superhuman by, which is a different trope, but,
Well, and he was physically blind, but he was not totally blind because he had a visor.
Right.
Well, anyway, it's something I'm just curious to see how they're going to work through.
Yeah.
So my next question is, how did the shuttle get under the comet?
I was wondering this myself.
Because we never saw the barn doors open on the back of the ship. We never saw, some sort of, Bombay doors to squirt the shuttle out. And they never ever talked about launching a shuttle prior to the fact when we saw Spock stuck underneath the comet.
Well, the one thing that they did do was, Spock said something and they never really, told us what it was. And then the next time you see Spock, he's in the shuttle. So, obviously he had a plan that Pike took, and but we never actually see him, get the shuttle launched and the, all of that. So yeah, that's
right. And I guess the next thing would be to sort of segue into that is, okay, so the shuttle's out there. We know that the Shepherds could see the Enterprise. Are we going to assume that their sensors could not resolve something the size of a shuttle? If they saw the Enterprise, why didn't they see the shuttle? Again, if you launched it, if it left the ship at some point, I guess I just wonder, how could it have gotten from point A to point B without being detected?
I don't have an answer for you because I wondered the same thing. So I'm in agree with you on this one.
It's not painted black. It's not got, super radar defeating stealth technology. It just makes me wonder, it had to have gotten launched and gotten there at some point.
Yep.
Unless, unless you're going to assume that the shepherds were so focused on chasing the Enterprise that they weren't paying attention. But it's still, if the shuttle was on the Enterprise and they're chasing the Enterprise and paying so much attention to the Enterprise, would they not have noticed something coming off the ship?
You would think so.
And that's one of the big questions that I had. Because I'm not disparaging the fact that they, that was their idea to do the mission, but it still kind of makes me wonder, okay, how did it get there?
I wondered myself. So
I think the next thing that I brought up is it just me, or does the sense of reckless abandon run in the Kirk family?
It seems to run abandoned in the Kirk family.
Because for somebody to be your xenobiologist, it just seemed kind of, I don't know, we're in the heart of this strange alien structure, and there's a strange glowing thing in the center of the room that's our control panel. And it's like, well, let's just jump up on the platform and touch it and see what happens.
Yeah. It seemed a little dumb.
Well, especially when you're being so careful and so cautious when you're walking around and looking at everything. And I guess my thing would have been, if you step up on the platform and the platform starts glowing, that's generally a sign you need to unass the platform.
Yep. And instead he thought, oh, I've just activated it. So
Ooh.
now, let's see what happens now.
Now, I'm trying to remember, and I didn't get a chance to watch it before it happened, so you'll have to forgive me if I'm a little hazy, but isn't that sort of the same thing that Jim did in the original series when he was on the planet with Miramani and they had the obelisk?
Yes, it is, actually.
Maybe the Kirks just have a thing about, grabbing, obelisks or monuments.
Maybe.
Like I said, it just sort of struck me that that's probably not the best thing, the best course of action to undertake when you're walking around in a strange unknown alien artifact.
Yeah.
As a good friend of mine always says, it's the captain's job to touch strange things.
Yeah.
But yeah, it just kind of made me, that's the first thing I thought of. I said, what is it with them Kirk boys?
Yep.
It's like, oh, there's something strange. Let me poke it with a stick.
Let me touch it. Can I touch it? Yep.
And I was gonna throw it in one more time. So the transporters won't work. You've got a crewman that is seemingly mortally wounded. And again, you can't transport them off. Why not send a shuttle?
Yeah.
Why not send a physical dust off to go get your guy? Because it's not like they're not close. It's not like they're in another system or they're way far away. It's just those little questions that I ask myself, because apparently they've got six or they've got several that they could use, but that's pretty much my feelings on that sort of thing.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. All right. That's all you got?
That's all I got.
All right. Well, I've got a bunch of stuff written down that I am going to go ahead and say in a different order. But the first one I'm going to say first is I'm really hoping that, although we seem to be getting, the story, a little bit of backstory from each character, I'm hoping that we don't get 10 episodes of Pike dealing with his vision of the future. I want him to because we've gotten this for the first 2 episodes. I want him to reach a point of acceptance with it, and so that we can spend more time on the other characters. Because at one point it's kind of like, well, how much more does, like, obviously he's tortured by it, but at the same time, he's got to come to a point where he accepts it, and he kind of reached a point of acceptance last episode, but it came up again this episode. So that's where I'm cautious. Was like, okay, look, I get it, and I'm sure it's going to come up again. I just don't want it to come up every single episode, because I think that would cheapen it, you know. So
yeah, it's like he's got something written on the first page of his planner that says 10 years from now, you know, be horribly disfigured in an engineering accident.
yeah.
And it's like every day when he goes to look at his calendar, he goes, oh, you know, 9 years, 362 days left.
Yeah. Here's my, and you know, he keeps saying my death, my death, my death. Well, it's not your death. It's your horrible disfigurement day. You know, it's not the same. You know, you're going to be in a Maytag at some point.
The infamous beepy chair.
Yeah. So, and he's seen that too. So, you know, let's just, anyway, my point being, and it's also worth saying too, that I liked how they had him, like, you know, kind of stop and pause about, like, you know, where do you see yourself in 10 years? And, you know, he had trouble with that. And the whole, like, I hope that they nail down the time period here, because I thought it was more like 2259, not 22, you know, 2256. Because that would make it, you know, 10 years in the future, but I didn't think it was 10 years from now. So it's like they're kind of like, they need to solidify that a little bit more.
Yep.
Just anyway, that's an annoying point for me at this point. Do shuttlecrafts have a steering wheel? This is the first time I remember seeing a steering wheel. So, like, I could see it maybe in certain situations kind of like operate like an aircraft, you know, where you would have the steering wheel, but you would also have like a, you know, like a, something that, you know, to go up and down as well. And, you know, maybe have, the steering wheel be able to pull up and push down on it and stuff like that. But anyway, when I saw the steering wheel, I kind of went like, I don't remember seeing a steering wheel before.
It was technically a stick or a yoke.
Okay, yeah.
Well,
but still,
in the immortal words of Commander Ransom, you know, there's nothing like the feel of a joystick in your hand. And I'm sort of the same mind that you are, that traditionally we've seen shuttles with a flat panel type, you know, touch and scoot sort of control system. But I mean, I can't argue with actually having a physical yoke.
Yeah. And maybe that's it. Maybe they use that in certain situations, you know, but I just, I saw that and I was just like, oh, I don't.
Well, and it actually had a throttle bar.
Yeah.
That was the other thing that I noticed, that it actually had a physical, you know, forward, backwards type throttle.
Right. Yeah. I guess I am doing these in order after all. There was an opportunity to tap into Hemmer's precognitive abilities, especially since it was brought up in the cold open, that they never did. And because, you know, we see the, you know, near the end where they explain that, you know, this was, you know, everything was transmitted to them. It had the events that were going to occur. And I thought to myself, well, if that were true, if he has some kind of precognitive ability, wouldn't he have picked up on that too? I don't know.
Well, I knew you were going to say that. No, I think the problem you run into with the idea of having precognition is how much downrange is it going to work?
Right.
And I think if it was too far forward, that would be not so good.
Right. Well, and it also goes back to the whole issue with the character in the first place, that it's difficult. The last thing that I want to mention in my not good enoughs is like in the past, like we had that short trek where the character was put through the little scenario, and Pike was involved with that, and it made it seem in this case that Pike was not involved in bringing Uhura to the Enterprise, but was, I don't know, approved it, but he didn't I don't know, she was recommended and he approved it versus he sought her out, or that she applied,
Right.
You know what I'm saying? Just the way that it was presented, it made it seem like that he didn't, he wasn't the one who initiated it. Like that maybe someone else, like maybe the lead communications officer or something, brought her on. So that's what I was wondering.
It depends on how you conceptualize how that would work. And it may be that somebody in the admin section at Starfleet was going, where can we get these cadets that are going to have a float? Where can we put them that they would be best? And maybe by reputation that they'd go, well, I think that, she's pretty talented and she's got these aptitudes. So let's put her on the Enterprise.
Yeah.
That it may have been just because of, Pike's reputation or whatever. They go, okay, I think this would be good for her. We'll put her on the Enterprise. If you want to go with the thought process that the Enterprise is a first-rate crack ship, and you go, okay, well, they're a good cadet, so we want to give them the best opportunity. Maybe there was some engineering cadet that they go, well, this captain's strong suit is engineering, so let's put them over there.
Yeah.
I don't necessarily see that the captains go, you get all the captains of ships together and you go, okay, here's who you got. Does anybody have want to call dibs on anybody?
Dibs is dibs.
That you go, I'll take this one.
Yeah.
I'll take this one. That it's sort of, I don't know if it's an assignment or a draft.
Yeah. 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 That's a good point. It could be from, it could be coming from the academy as well. So I don't know.
Maybe it's just Starfleet HR going, okay, well, I think they would be a good fit here and they would be a good fit there. And
maybe some get, assigned one way and some get assigned another way. So yeah. 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 So I guess that's it as far as my not good enoughs.
Okie dokie.
But, all of those things are pretty minor, I think. In general, I think that this was, I said to you and, to other hosts within Talk Through Media, on Thursday, I said, I think that this show is now my new favorite Star Trek. So, and it's only 2 episodes in, and I'd say probably Lower Decks is number 2 at this point. So it's funny how things change and shift. But
Well, it is. And the same thing that you and I have said on previous occasions on other shows, that looking at my scores, I really enjoyed the episode as a whole, and the things that I'm bringing up as no's and not good enough were not enough to dissuade my overall pleasure with the episode.
I mean, you gave it a 9.9. I gave it a 9.8. So
Yeah.
in general, we were pretty happy with this episode, and our first two ratings of this show are pretty high. I think I gave last episode a 9.75, and I think a 9.8. Because I think I would say that I like this episode just a slight bit more than I did last one. So but this is really, and unlike, like let's say with Picard, where I found that Picard, Picard's been kind of like wavy.
It's been up and down.
It's been up and down. There've been some good episodes and there have been some kind of clunker episodes, some things that really haven't been too good with the show. And we will see.
Well, it's the thing that you and I have said before, that because of the size of the episode arcs that we have in modern Trek, that you're talking 10 to 12. And I realize that we've had some 13s, but let's just say 10 to 12, as opposed to 26.
Yeah.
You have less tolerance for clunkers than you would on a arc that's double the amount of episodes.
Well, like the way it's worked is that, Discovery's been the one that's been more than 10. It's been, first season was 15, second season was 14, and then 3, 4, and have been 13, and all the other shows have been 10. And I think 10 is a good number. Discovery's going to 10 as of season 5. I think 10 is a good number, but 10 seems to be, even 10 at 10 episodes, you can have some that are clunkers, but like if any series could do more than 10, I think this one could do more than 10. The problem with it is that it's expensive. So
yep.
So 10 is good. I would rather have 10 really solid episodes than 16 or 18 or 20 that are, where you have 6 great ones and maybe 12 that are good or decent, and then you have 2 that are just absolute stinkers. So
right. And as I'd said before, the problem is if you have a 26 episode run and you have 2 real solid duds, you've got less change to the overall curve of the rating than over a 10 episode arc and you have 1 dud.
Yeah.
That's all I'm saying, is that there's far less tolerance for missing the mark with a shorter series arc.
Yeah. That's very true. Okay, well anyway, let's move on. We've got our feedback section.
Feedback.
All right, so we've got our feedback section. So we did get a voicemail from Jeff X-Force 11. And I say did because it sounded like we might not, but we did get one.
Hello, Star Trek fans. It's Jeff, X-Force 11, leaving my feedback about Strange New Worlds, Children of the Comet. This gave us great insight into Uhura. And honestly, my memories of the original series are quite vague because I watched when I was very little and haven't rewatched. But this is good, and I really appreciate it giving us insight into her character. And I like that they are telling these episodic stories, but yet dealing with Pike's overall arc and other things like that. So I really appreciate it. And honestly, I'm loving just the dynamic of Pike building in time with his crew in his quarters in a informal way. And we got to see this a little bit in Discovery, and it was very cool to see how it's played out on his own ship. So I really appreciate that. And I can tell you my new Star Trek crush is Nurse Chapel. But overall, I really enjoyed this series so far, and I'm looking forward to what's next. I will unfortunately be taking a 2-week break with helping out with productions that I'm running backstage tech stuff, but I will be watching when I get back. And thank y'all for doing the podcast. All right, X-Force is out.
Well, thank you so much, Jeff, X-Force 11, for your feedback. And I guess I will compile your streak. But yeah, I wasn't sure from last week what you said, whether or not you were going to give us feedback this week, or if it was going to be we were going to not get any for a couple of weeks. But I guess the play is next week. So, but anyway, as we said last week, you have definitely earned the ability to take a break. So don't feel bad. But, hey, this is a good time to encourage some others, to pick up the slack and get in your feedback accordingly. So, I wanted to just highlight your Trek crush of Nurse Chapel. I like her too. And, it's funny. I was trying to remember, I had mentioned something about her that I thought the nitpickers would go crazy over. And I mentioned it in the episode, but I don't think I actually mentioned it in the recording. Do you remember if I did or not?
Which one?
Okay. Nurse Chapel, right? And in the in TOS, she was blonde in one episode there. She looked like she had silver hair.
Mm-hmm.
But her eyebrows always kind of matched whatever her hair was. And I find that in the case of this Chapel, her eyebrows, they're both blonde, but her hair is a very, platinum blonde look, and her eyebrows aren't. And I just, the nitpickers, I'm just waiting for them to nitpick about that, because they nitpick about everything else. So I'm surprised they haven't nitpicked about that. Much like I was saying about Uhura's hair is different in this series. But anyway, don't get me wrong. I'm not nitpicking about it. I'm channeling a nitpicker is what I'm saying. And my point that I want to bring up is so far, I'm really liking her character a lot. I think that she's really, really good. So,
well, and I think the bottom line is, if I'm not absolutely mistaken, I think that that Majel Barrett wore a wig.
Yeah.
I don't think that was actually her hair.
Well, was it? I'd have to go back. The question that I had was Majel, I guess Majel Barrett was wearing a wig as Nurse Chapel versus wearing a wig for number one. And I know with Rebecca Romaine, it was the other way. Although I think in Strange New Worlds, she not in Enterprise, or sorry, not in Discovery, but in Strange New Worlds, she was she like colored her hair, brunette, dark, so that she, could be normal. Although I wonder if her eyebrows are changed, because I noticed her eyebrows are a certain shape. So, but I don't know.
Well, I was just going to say that all the pictures I've seen of Jess Bush, the actress that's playing Nurse Chapel now, is that all the pictures I've seen of her, she is a blonde.
Yeah. Anyway, I enjoy her character. I enjoy the acting from Jess Bush so far. I think she's been a pleasant surprise so far. All right. We only got one more bit of feedback, and that's from Andy in the Midwest. Do you want to take that one?
Sure.
LT?
Andy in the Midwest says, speaking of seeing the Enterprise, I do like the general look of both the interior and the exterior. I'm not sure how your other listeners feel, but I've heard some criticisms elsewhere about the interior not looking more like TOS.
Oh, of course.
Interior redesign is not new, though, and people have always accepted it in the past. The Enterprise changed drastically between TOS and TMP. I know they explained it with a refit, but the changes are so extreme it can hardly be the same ship. It changed again inexplicably before the second movie. Then the 1701A did the same thing between Star Trek V and Star Trek VI for no reason. My thing still will always go back to, we can do more aesthetically than we could in the Desilu days.
Right.
And yeah, you could have gone with a more strict interpretation of the original series, but the argument that both of us have made on previous occasions is, I don't know how well some of that 60s aesthetic would translate to the screen now. Is, despite the fact that we have a degree of nostalgia as Star Trek fans, I think if you look at the wider audience, I don't know if they would buy something that didn't look spacier. That we've gotten to the point where I think we have certain expectations of quote unquote spaceship interiors. So I don't necessarily have a problem with it. And I agree with Andy that, there were changes from movie to movie, and from, it's the same ship, but it's not quite the same ship. So I don't know. I mean, I like what they've done because I think it looks good. I think that it is aesthetically pleasing to the eye while still keeping some of the cues that we expect. And I would say, just from a design standpoint, if you ever wondered why on both TOS and even Next Gen, why they had so many shots in a curved hallway, it's because you can have a curved hallway that cuts your line of sight, so it makes you think that they're in a longer, bigger object than they really are. Because on the set, that curve of hallway is really not all that long. But depending on your staging and the way you shoot it and the way that you reshoot it, you can make it look like that hallway goes on forever and ever and ever. And even to throw in, if you were on a modern ship, if the hatches are open, you could theoretically see a long way down the hall. But if the doors are closed, then it would look like a far more finite space.
Yeah.
So part of that is just good set design.
Yeah. I mean, to me, what we're seeing is kind of like a combination of, like, it almost looks like the 2009 Enterprise that we saw in the JJ verse with a lot of whites, and the 2019 Enterprise that we saw. Was it 2019 or 2018? I guess it was 2019. Enterprise that we saw in season 2 of Discovery. So I think that it's a good combination, and I think that they need to. It's like you said. There are things that need to be updated. I think that there's some people that just. It's like I said last week. I hate people. I just. They can't open their minds to like something new, and it's just like, you know what, if there's no pleasing you, there is no pleasing you, you shouldn't watch the show, you shouldn't complain about the show, you shouldn't watch the show, period, because no version of Star Trek is going to do it for you. You're just going to complain. And the only version that may work for you is Star Trek Continues. Right. So the only version that will work for you is the exact version that you got in 1969 or 1994 or, 1999. I'm bringing up, or 2001 or 2005. Like, in other words, the end of the reign of whatever show came before it, That's the only way it will work for you. And even that won't work because it'll look too old, and the camera will look, 4:3, like, oh, 4:3, we can't have 4:3,
Well,
or maybe, taking it another way, like maybe Star Trek Nemesis, for the TNG era, if it's a take on that it'll work for you. But beyond that, it's like nothing will satisfy for some people. And just, I think that this is really going to work for me. I think it's going to be a great show, and I am very pleased. I think that this is the perfect mix of week-to-week stories and character continuity that I wish that we got to see this in season 4 of TNG, where we got a Picard that had to deal with the repercussions of being Locutus for a whole season. And it just kind of be like a story here, a story there, a B plot here, a B plot there. And that would have been perfect. Now, we did get some of that, but it was a lot of times it didn't deal with that kind of stuff at all. And I think the way that they're going to do it is perfect. So,
well, and I just want to, again, drag the soapbox out for a second and say, as an older fan who has seen the show evolve, it really makes me laugh that back in the late 90s and early aughts, there were a group of us that said Rick Berman killed the franchise.
Yeah.
That, we blamed Berman for things going bad, and we blamed Berman for the fact that Enterprise ended like it did. And it's funny now. And also to say that, Berman has perverted the great vision of Gene Roddenberry and all the sort of things you're hearing now. And it's funny that we're getting the same thing from the people who grew up in the Berman era that are going, J.J. Abrams is the Antichrist, and J.J. Abrams has ruined Star Trek, and Alex Kurtzman is the Antichrist, and he's perverted and twisted all the things that we loved about Star Trek. And I'm going, there's nothing new under the sun.
Yeah, it's
what is old is new again.
they said the same kind of stuff when TNG was out,
Correct. And that's what I was getting at, that I'm wondering if I live so long to see the next iteration of Star Trek after J.J. Abrams and Alex Kurtzman are done, that there's not going to be some angry fan going, Alex Kurtzman had the real vision of Star Trek, and this is an abomination, and he's perverting all the things that we loved about Star Trek. And I just think it's the nature of fandom. And as I've said before, the difference nowadays is that, every angry little cat piss man and every angry little fan that used to just go to their local comic shop or their local sci-fi store and crawl up on their soapboxes and pontificate about what was wrong with the current episodes of whatever science fiction or geeky show that they were on about, that now you've got global reach because they can crawl on to Twitter or YouTube or Facebook, and now all of their angry rantings are out there so that it's amplified so that everybody in the world can hear this, this guy, for lack of a better, to just pick a spot, this one angry fan from Saskatoon or Hoboken or, wherever you want to put them, actually has a worldwide platform that they can vent their spleen and complain about stuff. And other people go, well, gosh, maybe he's got a point. And they can jump on the bandwagon and go, yeah, and shake their fist and go, me too. I'm mad about this because they've done X to my favorite character. And I keep thinking, to put it in another context, are there angry Scooby-Doo fans that are complaining that Casey Kasem was no longer the voice of Shaggy? Do we have the same sort of thing in other fandoms? And we probably do. But it just seems like that a lot of the bile and a lot of the anger and a lot of the other stuff has just come out of Star Trek fandom. Of course, I would also be remiss if I didn't say that I think that Star Wars fans and Doctor Who fans are probably going through the same sorts of things. But I like the show. I'm willing to give the show a chance. I like the fact that we're getting modern production values and some updated stuff because they have the budget to do it. And I agree with you. I think this has the potential of becoming my new favorite series, and we'll just see. I'm sort of annoyed that there's all these angry, bile spouting fans out there, but I think it's just sort of a product of the modern day that we're going to have people that are polarized. We're not going to have too many people in the middle ground anymore.
Yeah. And those people we don't hear from.
Right. Because it's always the people in the middle that don't tend to be squeaky wheels.
Right. Yeah. The silent majority, like the Paramount, I think needs, they know that the vast majority of viewers are digging it. They know it. They know the reviews. They know, they are seeing the response on social media, and it's the squeaky wheels of the of the fandom that are saying these things, and they're not the majority. They're just not. I can mention about fans, and how some of them just piss me off, but really, the majority of the feedback that I'm seeing posted is overwhelmingly positive. It's just the vocal minority that is just saying,
right,
the other stuff.
And here's my final point on this. if the show was doing as bad as the critics say, if the show was doing as bad as the loudmouths on social media say, why would they keep renewing it? Because we have seen series that have not done well, that have not been renewed. We've seen series and adaptations that have fallen flat on their face, and they didn't get a second season. So I don't think that Paramount, given the nature of how things have gone since they launched Discovery, I don't think that they would continue to throw money at a project that was not making some sort of return. I just don't see it. Whenever you see other production channels that will put together an idea and throw it out there and it lasts for a season.
Well, I'm going to just correct you in a way, but this is a good correction. So I just took the opportunity to check on Rotten Tomatoes and to see how the show is doing. And it is doing pretty well. The critics' consensus is a 98. So it is certified fresh at 98%. So that is pretty darn good. And as far as the top critics, it says an average rating of 8.45 out of 10, with 36 rated fresh and only one rated rotten. And I don't know who the rotten one is, but who cares? The audience score is an 83%. So that is quite a bit higher than we've seen for other other shows.
And that's kind of my point. The thing with Rotten Tomatoes is I tend to discount the critic score because the critics love stuff that I hated.
Yeah.
But if the audience score is close to the critic score, then you know something's going on.
And I would say that is close. It says audience score. It says the percentage of users who rated this 3.5 stars or higher, and I assume that's 3.5 out of 5.
Yep.
So its average rating is 4.2 with 347 ratings, and it says, I don't know why it says Prime Video for free. That's not. Oh, I guess the first episode is available for free.
Yes, the first episode is out in several platforms.
Yeah. And what else does it say here? I was trying to see what information it had on the. Oh, here we go. Yeah, so the first episode, it got a rating of 100%, and the second episode it doesn't have a tomato rating yet, but it had 3 ratings of fresh and 0 rotten. So that, anyway, that's pretty good indeed. So, all right.
I think that's about it for me.
Okay.
Right now.
Okay. I noticed that the beaming effect seems to be much more melodic. It almost sounds like someone is singing when it goes through.
Mm-hmm.
So it is that's one thing. And I wanted to mention, I gotta bring her up again to I already
pulled that up.
Oh, Celia Rose Gooding?
Yes, I did.
Oh, okay. So I will just say that I thought that Celia Rose Gooding was related to Cuba. I think it's Cuba Gooding Jr. That is in fact not the case. She is actually related to someone else, which LT obviously has that information there. So I'm going to let him talk about it. But I will say first that Celia Rose Gooding is not related to Mason Gooding, who is in fact related to Cuba Gooding Jr. Mason Gooding is Cuba's son, and he played Rafi Musika's son, Gabe, in Star Trek Picard in the first season. So that's that scene where she goes to the is it the Stardust City
Yep.
fertility clinic or whatever? That was in fact Gabe. So he played Gabe. So the one that I guess they're still not speaking. So okay, so you have the Celia Rose Gooding info. So why don't you take this over?
I pulled that up really quickly, and she's 21. She was born in New York City in the year 2000. Her mother is an actress, a singer, and a dancer, and her father was working in the financial sector and was actually killed on 9/11.
Yeah, he was in the World Trade Center. She was in, she's been doing a lot on Broadway, and her mother was also has done a lot on Broadway, and I think she goes by is it LaChance or something like that?
Yep.
Yeah, I think that's how you say it. But anyway, I wanted to bring that up. So let's go into the spot the references section. The Comet. I noticed this. So, okay. So our discussions about the year. So it was called C2260 Quentin. So two things about that. So is the C2260, does that mark the year? Is that what that was about? And okay, Quentin, is in Quentin Tarantino? Was that kind of a highlight to that? And
well, the comet wasn't barefoot.
Yeah, and it also didn't have Samuel L. Jackson in it, so, or John Travolta. We saw Pike make dinner for his crew members on Discovery, so there's that. This Hammer is a member of the Enar. Now, the Enar is a subspecies of the Andorians. They are supposedly, I believe they're all blind. So it's not just, it's not just something of Hammer, but supposedly all of the Enar are blind. But anyway, they are an offshoot subspecies of the Andorians. So that's why he looks very Andorian, but has white skin instead of blue. So anyway, we hear Nausicaans mentioned by Pike. So we, of course, have seen Nausicaans. They were introduced in TNG. Play dumb jot, human. Anyway, Uhura and Spock sang together or played instruments together on in the TOS episode Charlie X. So that was worth mentioning. We hear Pike call for pattern April Omega 3. So that is obviously a reference to Admiral April. Probably when he was a captain on the Enterprise, he came up with that pattern. So worth saying. We hear Persephone 3. Of course, Persephone was a daughter of Zeus, and that was one of Dr. Adam Soong's daughters was Persephone. So before Corey, the one that we see in Picard season 2, one of them that was mentioned was Persephone. So I thought I would mention that. And we see on screen near the end of the episode, we see 8 planets are in the Persephone star system. On Memory Alpha, it says at least 2 are capable of sustaining life. Now, what I saw on the screen, it looked like several of them looked like they might have had water. I mean, so I don't know. It was hard to tell, but so I don't know if some of them might be class L versus class M. But anyway, just worth mentioning. And if you ever wonder, class L is supposed to be like class M, except it's too inhospitable for to have life. The game of Yahtzee is mentioned in by Kirk. He mentioned Yahtzee. Breaking the laws of physics. And of course, I thought of Scotty because he said, I don't know how many times in TOS, I cannot change the laws of physics, Captain. So I thought that was a send off to that. And we hear trilithium resin. And that was, of course, first mentioned in Star Trek TNG, the season 6 episode Starship Mine. So,
yep.
Yeah. All right. So that's it for my spot the references. Again, I did come up with some of these through the Trek Culture YouTube channel, but I did come up some of them myself. Like, for example, the Breaking the Laws of Physics and the Yahtzee. So, and trilithium resin. I don't think they mentioned that on theirs either. So, okay, so let's move on to our shipwide announcements. We've got Wes Huntington's shipwide announcements. I have not heard them. They actually came in while we were recording. So here we go.
Hi, everyone. I'm Wes Huntington, one of the 2 co-hosts of the Twin Cities Trekkies podcast, and this is your shipwide announcements for this week. This week's episode of the Radio Room focused on Uhura and showrunner Henry Alonso Myers. Will Wheaton had interviewed both Celia Rose Gooding, who plays the character of Uhura, and showrunner Myers, and they talked about Uhura in general and how they wrote for these legacy characters. They were both interviewed via video due to the fact that both are in Mississauga, Ontario, Canada, filming Season 2 of Strange New Worlds. There was a featurette on the music for Strange New Worlds, which included episode composer Nami Melomad and main title composer Jeff Russo. They were quick to point out that they worked together on this project and enjoyed adding little Easter eggs to the scores. There was also a featurette on the costume designs of Strange New Worlds. The person in question on this was Bernadette Croft. Before Strange New Worlds, Croft worked alongside Discovery costume designer Gershel Phillips for its first season. Croft had the unique task of trying to blend the Discovery era and the original series era with the approach to the Starfleet uniforms. There was also a sneak peek at episode 3, which will be next week, entitled Ghosts of Illyria, and host Will Wheaton will be interviewing Rebecca Romaine, who plays Una Chin Riley, aka Number 1 in Strange New Worlds. Here's what's making news this week in the Star Trek universe for all you Talk Through Media Star Trek podcast listeners. This week we sadly lost another member of the Star Trek family. Jack Keller died at the age of 75 at Cedars-Sinai Medical Center in Los Angeles on May 7th after developing complications of leukemia. Keller was a one-time Star Trek guest actor, having played the Boswick freighter captain Jahil in the first season Star Trek Deep Space Nine episode Babel. Keller had a storied career, appearing in such TV shows as Hill Street Blues, Hunter, Cagney and Lacey, LA Law, Newhart, St. Elsewhere, ER, 24, NYPD Blue, Angel, Mad Men, Monk, and Bones. His notable film credit is that of the Dude's landlord Marty in The Big Lebowski. Other such notable film credits include Pineapple Express, Austin Powers, The Spy Who Shagged Me, Lethal Weapon 4, Waterworld, I Love You to Death, and Men in Black 2. The reviews are in for Star Trek Strange New Worlds' series premiere, and the reaction has been very, very positive. As of this recording for the Shipwide announcements, the show holds a 98% critical rating on Rotten Tomatoes, which is the highest ever recorded Star Trek production on the site. Most reviews have generally stated that Strange New Worlds is a return to the old-school Star Trek feeling that many have said was missing from the other Kurtzman Trek shows. Paramount Plus has made the premiere of Strange New Worlds free to watch on YouTube for a limited time. This is sadly only restricted to residents of the United States and will be available until May 26th. Speaking to IGN recently, Star Trek Strange New Worlds showrunner Henry Alonso Myers teased about an upcoming episode of Strange New Worlds entitled Spock Amok, which is episode 5. He said to expect a romantic comedy type of episode. The episode will air on June 2nd. Adrian Holmes, who was recently seen as Robert April in the premiere episode of Strange New Worlds, has a supporter in Star Trek The Next Generation's LeVar Burton. Speaking to The Hollywood Reporter, Holmes has said that he received a video message from Burton welcoming him to the Star Trek franchise. Holmes said it was, quote, cool to discover, unquote, the origins of the character, and he said he loved the diversity and inclusivity of the Star Trek franchise. As it turns out, the path to bring Wesley Crusher into the Season 2 finale of Picard was more complicated than we were led to believe. In the featurette for last week's Ready Room, based upon the return of Wesley Crusher, showrunner Akiva Goldsman and executive producer Alex Kurtzman recalled a dispute between the various show's producers over the use of Wesley Crusher. After a quote-unquote war, as Akiva Goldsman put it, Picard ended up being the winner of the use of him. It is unclear what other shows they were referring to, but it most certainly did not include Discovery, as Season 5 discussions were not taking place when this argument took place. That being said, it is possible one of the two animated series could have used him. Unless they relented, and Wesley is only in Picard, it is quite possible we could be seeing more of him in the near future, either on Lower Decks or in Star Trek Prodigy. Season 3 of the Orville, entitled New Horizons, will arrive on June 2nd, which puts it in direct competition with Strange New Worlds' second half of its first season. In anticipation, Hulu, which will be distributing the series, released a 2-minute and 40-second trailer for the 11-episode season. The episodes are anticipated to be much longer than they were during the 2 seasons it aired on Fox. The series will be streaming on Hulu in the United States and on Disney Plus in select international markets. At the 33rd Annual GLAAD Media Awards held on May 6th, Star Trek Discovery actor and LGBTQ activist Wilson Cruz was given the Vito Russo Award, a special commendation for his decades of service towards building a better future for the LGBTQ community working in the entertainment industry. Named in honor of GLAAD co-founder, the late Vito Russo, the award is presented to an LGBTQ media professional who has made a significant difference in accelerating LGBTQ acceptance. Throughout his career, Cruz has paved the way for success in the LGBTQ community. He broke new ground in 1994 when the actor was cast as Ricky Vasquez in the ABC series My So-Called Life, which saw an openly gay character played by an openly gay actor for the first time on network television. Toy action figure company Super 7 has made more TNG-based action figures based upon the old Galoob action figures from 1988, following up on their first wave that came out last summer. Action figures this time included Commander William Riker, Dr. Beverly Crusher, Lieutenant Commander Geordi LaForge, Counselor Deanna Troi, Judge Q, and, for the first time ever in Star Trek action figure history, Armus, the pool of sentient sludge who killed Lieutenant Tasha Yar in Skin of Evil and who made a cameo appearance in Season 2 of Star Trek Lower Decks. Twin Cities Trekkies is a weekly podcast dedicated to everything Star Trek. My podcast co-host Mackenzie Flickinger and I talk about everything from the original series all the way through Star Trek Strange New Worlds and everything in between. New episodes are released every Wednesday. You can find Twin Cities Trekkies on every platform platform you can think of for podcasts. Our social media handles is TC Trekkies Pod for both Facebook and Instagram. You can also reach us by emailing us at tctrekkiespodcast@gmail.com, or you can leave us voice messages when you find the podcast at anchor.fm/Twin Cities Trekkies.
And thank you for that, Wes. It's always great to hear the news that you've gathered up for us for the episode.
There was definitely a lot of news this week. That's for sure. That's for sure. Well, for some reason, and I don't know why, Parrot Analytics hasn't been posting their usual thing that they had been posting for months and months and months, where they post about, they seem to have stopped publishing them. I cannot find them, where they say TV series demand across all television platforms. They don't seem to be doing that regularly now. Instead, they'll put out some other stuff like breakout shows and whatnot. So, they did post something for TV series demand for April 23rd to 29th, but they haven't posted anything since then. So the last 2 weeks, there's nothing out there. However, this is under an article. It says breakout shows April 30th to May 6th, 2022. And they mention Under the Banner of Heaven being a breakout show, and also Star Trek Strange New Worlds. So when they get to Strange New Worlds, it says Paramount Plus's Star Trek Strange New Worlds also had a similar growth in demand right after its first episode aired on May 5th and entered the rankings in 10th place this week with 18.3 times the average series demand in the U.S. So beyond that, I don't have any more information. It doesn't say anything about Picard, for example, which we know Picard was in the top 10 all, week, all run pretty much.
Yeah.
But like Strange New Worlds being, debuting in number 10, that seems low to me. But we'll see. But I don't know. I wish that sites that did this kind of thing would be more consistent and would, if they're going to produce this kind of information, that they would do it regularly, because it's like either show it or don't. Just,
Right.
Don't put it on sometimes and not others. So,
Well, it's like we've said, for some reason, the Parrots have been kind of inconsistent in the last few weeks.
yeah, it's almost like, there was one person there that did it, and that person's either not there anymore or
They went
away.
to the beach or...
Yeah. So, so that's where we're at with that. Yeah. So, all right. So that's it for our news this week. Again, thank you, Wes, for your news segment, and hopefully we'll have better parrots next week. But until next time, to submit your theories and feedback, go to talkthroughmedia.com/feedback, where you can submit text or audio. You can call 216-232-6146 and leave a voicemail. You can email us at strangenewworlds@talkthroughmedia.com. You can also post in our designated episode thread in our Facebook group. That's at facebook.com/groups/Star Trek TTM podcasts with an S at the end. You can tweet us and Instagram us at Star Trek TTM.
If you would like to support the podcast, you can like our page on Facebook. That's at facebook.com/talkthroughmedia. And while you're there, write us a review. You can share us on Facebook and retweet us on Twitter, especially when we post that a new episode is out. Be sure to subscribe to the Talk Through Media YouTube channel, which is where you'll find all of our newest episodes first. You can subscribe to us on Apple Podcasts or the podcast client of your choice, and while you're there, give us a rating or a review. You can also go to podchaser.com, where you can rate and review the podcast and even individual episodes. Finally, the best way to help us keep the lights on is to support us via Patreon. We'd like to thank all of our Patreon supporters: Andrew Davis, Morning Pace, Trey, and a special shout out to Trey for upping his tier. Thanks, Trey. Mike, Robert Kaiser, Jeff Gentry, Kevin Lyle, Michael Carrier, Aaron Mays, Brian Shiro, Kim Vogley, Kyle McAdams, James Robbins, and me.
And you.
And me.
All of our podcasts are available on the Talk Through Media all-inclusive feed. These include the Rebinge Deep Space Nine podcast, the Star Trek Discovery podcast, the Star Trek Picard cast, the Star Trek Lower Decks podcast, the Star Trek Prodigy by Rebinge It, this podcast, which will get its own feed, that hasn't been submitted to the various podcasts yet, but that will happen this week. But until then, I shouldn't say until then. If you listen to us through either the all-inclusive feed, the Star Trek Discovery podcast feed, or the Star Trek Picard cast feed, you're going to continue to get this podcast. So nothing for you to do. Kyle, LT, and I are enduring Fear the Walking Dead. I didn't actually, the episode that we're going to talk about this week, I've already seen ahead. So I actually don't mind this episode that's coming up that we're going to be talking about. That'll be for season 7, episode 13. But it's been a very uneven and sometimes pretty bad show that it's unfortunately gotten into. But we enjoy podcasting about it because it can be fun to talk about. So, but yeah, Kyle, who you'll hear again soon on here to talk about Lower Decks. And we may have him guest, but he's been busy with his farm, doing farming things.
Yes, because it goes without saying, Kyle McAdams has a farm.
Yes.
E-I-E-I-O.
Anyway, and I'll mention again that we are still trying to fill the third spot on this podcast. So it's LT and I for sure, and the third is to be determined. So if you have any interest in either being a guest host or being a full-time host on the network, absolutely, let us know, and we can talk about it. And if you know how to edit, you will be given extra. That's. I'll just say that if you know how to edit for podcasting, you will be moved up the ladder. So that's highly recommended. This guy over here, LT, we are going to be training him on the editing. So, but that will start soon. But anyway, for our next episode of the Star Trek Strange New Worlds talk through, we will be covering season 1, episode 3, which is titled Ghosts of Illyria, which is kind of funny because I used to live in the city of Illyria, which is actually spelled differently. Instead of ILL, it was EL, but sounds very similar. Written by Kayla Cooper, who I know is going to be one of the guests on the Ready Room next week, and Bill Wolkoff, who I know is one of the, I think I saw his name as a supervising producer, if I'm not mistaken. But anyway, he's one of the producers. Directed by director and actress Leslie Hope. We don't have a description, but we can assume the fact that Rebecca Romaine is going to be on the Ready Room. It's probably going to be a heavy number 1 episode. So until next time, I'm Brian.
And I'm LT.
Peace and long life.
Live long and prosper. Kapla.
Kapla.